Through more than 2 decades at Kenner and Hasbro, Aaron built worlds, told stories, and designed toys for some of pop culture's biggest names, including Transformers, Batman, Star Wars, and more. Join him as he explores the archives and tells you the stories of the creative process behind your favorite toys. This is the Toy Armada with your host, Aaron Archer.
So welcome back to yet again another Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. And I am your host, Protoman, and we're going to be jumping into a special one. I think this is going to be, me and Aaron talked about this, and I feel like this is going to be a multi-parter episode that we're going to be doing. And it is going to be that of the Transformers Armada brand. Now, next year in 2022 is going to be the 20th anniversary of Transformers Armada. But as of this recording, when you're hearing our voice, we're still in 2021. And I think what we're going to do instead is the 20th anniversary of the creation and the behind the scenes of Transformers Armada, because this is going to be a multi-part episode. So we're going to dive deep into the early beginnings of the creation of this brand, the pre-Transformers Armada, and everything of that. But first, Aaron, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
So before we get into that, we got a question from last episode. We talked about Jurassic Park and the Alien franchise. And we have a question from Christopher Quinn here. And he wants to know, what are your thoughts on the recent Transformers Jurassic Park crossover, and if you would have done something differently? And for listeners who are not aware, Hasbro has been recently doing crossovers with other major, movie brands or financial brands and stuff like that. And they did a crossover with Jurassic Park and Transformers, reenacting that famous first T-Rex scene. It, for people listening as of this recording, should be out in stores right now. GameStop and Target are starting to get them. So be sure to check it out. But what were your thoughts on it?
Oh, I like that stuff. I mean, if you think about the Pepsi Optimus Prime, stuff like that, I don't mind the tie-ins and interesting exploration. So I dig it. I mean, any vehicle is ripe to be a Transformer. I mean, we pitched similar concepts back in the day about Batmobiles and DeLoreans and things, and they've done the Top Gun plane and various things now. So I dig it. I dig it.
That's a good question, actually, because when did Kenner stop having the Batman license? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was 2001, or so maybe the end of 2002.
There could have been a potential crossover there.
Oh yeah, there definitely could have been.
Interesting. That's true. I never thought of that. So yeah, and not to mention, like, you got to work with all that other crossover stuff that Hasbro was doing at the time with Transformers, the Marvel and the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah. So there's always something in that world of how do you apply the play pattern, the puzzle play, to interesting objects or vehicles, and turn them into robots or characters. And so yeah, I dig all that stuff. And that Jurassic Park 2-pack has kind of the best of both worlds, right? It's got Beast Wars and kind of classic vehicle all in one.
And not to mention, like, also the whole, like, car license aspect of it too, like you wanted to bring up, where it's like also the ability to use car licenses, which was much more dodgy back in the day.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah. So anytime you can do a real car, that's cool.
Yeah, that JP93, whatever it's called there. But yeah, so that was just one of the questions from the Jurassic Park segment. Again, that's our segment that we did last time, so be sure to check that out in the archive. But we're going to be talking today, again, about Transformers Armada, the 2002 Transformers series. While the year before that, they did the Transformers Robots in Disguise series based off of a Japanese Transformers property called Car Robots. This really was the true full-flesh, return to vehicles, and 100% that moving forward, where Transformers Robots in Disguise was kind of a funny line. It was a mixture of previously existing molds. There's still beasts there. There's it's like Predacons versus Autobots. So Armada was really the first true return to the original kind of idea. Autobots, Decepticons, vehicles, maybe the odd beast here and there on the sidelines, but generally vehicles and kids and humans and a whole new play pattern. But we're going to go to the beginning of all of that. So I'm going to leave it to you. Paint the picture. I'll jump in maybe once in a while for something factual, but you're going to steer the ship here because this is where it all began. So take it to the beginning.
Yeah, so for a long time it had been sequential. So there was Beast Wars, and then Beast Machines came along. That wasn't performing as well. It was a little more odd vehicle forms or even beast forms. Beast Wars was great. You could tell what things were, even when they were hybrid or Fusors. You kind of could tell what they were. If you look at Beast Machines, it's kind of like a truck thing or a flying thing, or so that alienated a certain amount of audience. So sales were going down. It got a little dark in the storyline. At that same time, they were developing trans tech, but that was very short-lived and really set aside here for a whole other kind of topic of lost potentials. But that would have been the successor, but because it was going down this dark road of Beast Machines and that wasn't working, obviously the sequel to that wasn't going to happen. So that was also a transition time of leadership, and Brian Goldner came on, and he kind of wanted to reinvest in Hasbro's brands, and looked at G.I. Joe and Transformers and Tonka and Nerf and a few others as potential stakes in the ground that could be developed against in a more driven by Hasbro sort of way, versus always relying on the big licenses of Star Wars or the fluctuating licenses of Batman coming in and out. So why not develop our in-house things a little stronger with a little more directness? So that doomed Beast Machines and Transtech because that whole plan wanted to get back to basics then. And that's really where this story starts. How do we get back to basics? And what were basics to us then, as I sat in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Kenner offices, was getting back to vehicles that looked like vehicles. Even though we couldn't use licenses. We knew that at the time. And get back to a more traditional Autobot Decepticon type of storyline. Now, storyline is a relative term at the early stages because it's not really a storyline, it's just a set of ideas around good and evil and forms and silhouettes and types of features that will come into play. So I don't want to get ahead of myself with story.
Yeah, that comes much later.
Yeah, but I was tasked. So my story here with this portion of my Transformers, which started my long-term partnership with Takara and everything. I think it was late 2000, October, November, when they told us that they were moving us to Rhode Island from Cincinnati. They offered a lot of people the opportunity to move, and not everybody was interested. Cincinnati, I've said many times, Kenner was built on Cincinnati folks, and, they had lived their whole lives there. They really weren't interested in moving. And that was, that's fine. That gave other opportunities to other people. I was one of those people. So when some of the folks said they weren't going to go, I raised my hand and said, I'll take Transformers if you're looking for someone to manage that, because at that time it was that relationship was a big deal. So it had to be someone
just to
that knew
cut
how
in
to
for a second. So the opportunity to work on the Transformers brand came more so because someone else didn't want to go, as opposed to, the slot was there for you.
It wasn't my destiny to work on Transformers, although I had a relationship with them, which helped me get that foot in the door. But if that guy would have said, no, I'm going to go to Rhode Island, and he would have kept running RID and wherever the show would have gone. It wouldn't have been called Armada and stuff because I know my contributions.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
Did not know that.
Yeah, he wasn't interested in going, so he phased out halfway through various RID parts of development. He helped with names and some color shifts and things, but that's how I came on board. So Brian Goldner wanted to get back to basics, and he wanted a collectible kind of concept. He was familiar with what was happening in Japan prior, with various types of collectible play, small play, micro play, things that, years before anything like that came to the Western markets.
And also because, I was doing research heavily on Brian's past when he passed away, and he had a lot of knowledge of the Japanese brands.
Absolutely.
Because he had a lot of success with Tamagotchi and a lot of other Japanese brands, and he also helped with a lot of other smaller Japanese brands and stuff. So, and I'm pretty sure he was probably, especially at that time, 1999, 2000, Pokemon taking over the world.
Yeah.
Especially on the Japanese side of thing. But yeah, continue. Just wanted to just reiterate that.
And it came from, Power Rangers and all that as well.
Yeah, and Power Rangers, yeah, of course. The whole Sentai.
So he understood the potential, and to that end, I'll just say, he put a lot of trust in me to make this happen. Tremendous amount of trust when you think about what he was trying to do, because it was really a very small group of us, and I was really the only designer that made this happen at the time. So his goal was to have the collectability. That presented Takara the opportunity to pitch a lot of different ideas that they have had over the years. They were very much happy to, let me take a half step back. What Brian also wanted to bring back was that co-development, which was brought up in the documentary. For a few years, they were kind of like a partner vendor. We would come up with ideas and what they would want for the Beast Wars stuff, and Takara would kind of make that happen, even though it wasn't necessarily an item they were going to sell in their market, or even an item they would have wanted in their market, or a price point they needed for their market. But they were willing to make it work, and that's how you get Beast Wars 2 and different things in their market to make use of tools that they had access to. But it really wasn't their ideal situation. I'll say.
And why we have stuff here that they didn't get on their end during Beast Wars. There's
they didn't want to pay
two sides of the coin there. Yeah.
So they were eager to get a better partnership. We were eager to get a better partnership, just to make better overall product. Co-develop the animation, co-develop the products, co-develop all of it. Share the burden together. So that was very big, and that gave me this opportunity to then work with Takara in developing this stuff. So they were able to bring out a lot of ideas that they had been sitting on while Hasbro was doing Beast Machines and Beast Wars and stuff. So they had feature ideas and play ideas. They had Web Diver at the time that that potential could have been in there. Things like the model that became the Super Optimus, the leader Optimus Prime. Those were early models. They had concept models of. What
he's referring to is the Super. I guess it was. I forget what the price point, because you guys had a weird price point terms for that. I think it was whatever was that large Optimus Prime, Armada Optimus Prime with the infrared.
Yeah,
that's what he's referring to.
Yeah. So they had a lot of different concept ideas that they had been sitting on with vehicles and that kind of play that they were eager to show us. We went through them, we looked at them, and started making decisions, around the Minicons being a whole concept that we're going to build around that would trigger the features. Those would be the collectible price points and things that maybe the kids would want to chase throughout the line.
Got to catch them all.
A little bit. I don't think we were that direct with it, but certainly that couldn't be avoided at the time.
Well, what toy line didn't have on the back, collect them all.
Yeah.
So an extension of that.
So am I covering everything there? This is all in late 2000. We're making these decisions. I did my first drawings of like a fleet of Minicon silhouettes and kind of things late in December, November of that year. And then I did go to Japanese Toy Fair the following year.
What year was that?
2001.
Okay, I'm going to try to find footage on that.
Which would have been, I think, was pretty early back then. I think that was in March back then. Now I think it's in June. But it was at Tokyo Big Sight.
Okay.
And that was pretty cool. I actually went there because we were co-developing, but we were really in the middle of RID development at that time. If you really think of the scheduling of it all, we were cooking Armada in the background or foreground, side burner maybe, the whole time, but we still had to fill that year with the RID transitional stuff. So I was still recording voices and picking colors for that stuff and package development, story development, all that stuff that was kind of in this odd transition of when we moved to Rhode Island in early 2001. That was all still happening. So I wanted to go to Tokyo Toy Fair, but it really wasn't the right development cycle timeline. But they knew I was interested, and I really wanted to get a handle on the whole Japanese market, because at that time I wouldn't say that I was a knowledgeable fan of a lot of the different things happening in the micro space of the toy industry in Japan. You know, I kind of knew the big brands and the stuff that got sent over here.
And it really is a different animal over there.
Oh, yeah. You know, I knew the big stuff, you know, and was like fan of Akira and Fist of the North Star and
nice.
You know,
Hokuto
various thing, Appleseed and stuff like that. But I had no idea, you know, and I was delighted, no doubt. So I wanted to get over there. And I actually, going back to the Star Wars episode, I flew to San Francisco so much for that licensing relationship that I had so many miles built up that I used my miles to go to Japan. Business, not even business class, just basic seat the first time I went. And
frequent flyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that actually
pays off.
And it was actually, people were like, you're using your own stuff to go to, you know, I mean, they were going to pay for the hotel and the food and everything else. But people thought that was a little weird. And in the end, it showed my commitment. When my boss found that out, or was willing to do that, and people kind of found that out, it was like, okay, he's serious about this. So that was my first trip to Japan, and meeting everybody and having some photos taken, which we'll show. They're in the Armada yearbook 2003 of the whole team that started that project. Where do we want to go from here?
Well, so Brian pitches this idea, do something different, toyetic. Maybe do you want to kind of cover a little more how you guys wanted to tackle, I mean, obviously Autobots, Decepticons, this Minicon concept, but when did really the idea of like these Minicons and unlocking, and how much is that going to be integrated into every toy? You know, is it going to be just the larger price points? Is this going to be something just for, you know, like, you know, because like you see how sometimes when there's an idea that's used for any kind of brand, it's usually only used for the deluxe, I guess, and I'll use air quotes here, the deluxe and above. And this applies to any brand, if you know, whether it be like Batman or whatever. I
think it was pretty clear pretty early that we were going to end up putting a Minicon in everything. I think when it initially started, that was going to be the 3-packs, but it became pretty clear because Takara, if left to their original concepts, each Minicon would have been unique to unlock that car's feature.
Oh wow! Okay,
yeah, you know, they were always very you know, particular key fits a particular lock where I always had to defend the dumb American kids, is how I used to refer to it, that would just try to jam any key or any Minicon into the port and be upset that it wouldn't work. I had to account for that. The Japanese did not, but in the end we did.
Well, and to be fair, it's 2001. The internet still isn't in every household.
Yeah.
The communication lines are not really there. Everyone's not looking how each other's world could easily be done on YouTube or streaming or whatever. There still is a bit of a cultural shock and difference between these two groups of people.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's understandable.
And one of the things, as we're doing all of this, that was not fully... One of my responsibilities, one thing that wasn't fully considered, was where we were with the fandom at the time, or where fandom of Transformers was at that time. The team that was dealing with creating Armada was really dealing a bit with a house on fire while we're trying to build the mansion. Because Beast, I inherited the end of Beast Machines. And that was not fun.
Oh, no.
Those sales, those forms, trying to get those products out to the end of KB, closeouts and stuff, it wasn't pleasant So my first encounter with Transformers, where I'm more responsible for the business and the planning of it, was really a bleak-looking landscape. I don't want to oversell it either, but it just wasn't, wasn't big deal. Where we were
but you are correct, because even 10 years after the fact, in the secondary market, mint on card Beast Machine stuff was still going for nothing. So it shows just how much of it was still out there.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing when you have loose product. Loose product means it was purchased, it was loved, it was opened. When you have carded product in large numbers, it means no one bought it, and no one opened it, and no one cared.
Yeah.
And there was just so much of that, where Robots in Disguise the following year wasn't so much the case. So it was pretty clear. And same thing with Beast Wars prior. There was just this weird thing in the middle, which was Beast Machines, which didn't do well.
Yeah. So, dealing with that, trying to rebuild now some sort of new story with RID, and we were naming those characters. A lot of us had nostalgic G1 names that we enjoyed from our youth, so we tried to get those back just because we needed names, right? All of a sudden there was a bunch of vehicles and types of vehicles, and
that's something that I was going to wait until you talked about story, but since you brought it up, that to me, and this is the thing with Armada, and again, anyone who listens to my podcast and even this one, when we talk about trademarks, the big thing that Armada did that Beast Wars really didn't do too much of, and neither did Beast Machines or Robots in Disguise, is it started to dip into the I guess we could call it the iconic trademark names of characters, where with Robots in Disguise, you did have Optimus Prime, you did have Ultra Magnus, there was Mirage, there was Ironhide, but then you had Speed Breaker, you had or Sideburn, as he was called in America, Sideburn. You had X-Brawn, you had Movor, you had a lot of these like a lot of trademarks that honestly were never used ever again. Skid Z with a Z for some, there was Wars, WAR, with a dot in between, War, a lot of trademarks that just were used that one time and then never used again. Where when you went into Armada, here's Ratchet, here's not Ratchet, here's Prowl, here's I'm just gonna look up right now at my toy line. Here's Jetfire, here's Hoist, here's all of these G1 names, pretty much what we're trying to say. All these classic G1 names, sure, Hot Shot, that's a much more newer one. It came from Robots in Disguise, but all the other ones, whether it be Sideswipe or Wheeljack or any of those, they came from those classic names, even on the Decepticon side with Cyclonus and Starscream and stuff. So Armada really was the first major push of that, up to that point where, G2 was pretty much the last time we heard a lot of those trademarks. A lot of them.
Yeah, we we wanted to get them. I mean, it wasn't so tactical, unfortunately, I'd hate to say, but we need to get these names back. That it wasn't quite that panic, but I had some of the guidebooks that were coming out at the time. They were independently published, just photo books of the Transformer segments as they came. Sometimes they were broken into scale of product, and those were great for me because they had a ton of names in them, all in one stop shop for me.
Yeah. Again, pre-internet kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had
today
I remember
would have been
buying on eBay the Marvel Who's Who Transformer books.
Yeah, the Marvel Universe trade, which had issues 1 to 4 by
because I
Bob
didn't have
Lugansky.
any information. I mean, that I needed to know as much as I possibly could. There were bootleg guides to the G1 episodes that guys wrote. Rick's books, were invaluable in their own ways. There were a lot of different harder. It was harder to know all that old stuff at the time, right?
It wasn't easily accessible like it is today.
And I was coming into it cold. Think of this as a research project for me. I'm familiar with Transformers. I played with them in '84. I still have my G1 Optimus from my childhood, but I am by no means have lived it the entire way. I'm not.
You got out when it wasn't in vogue, but yet it kept going while you were out.
Yeah. To my credit, I do have the reboot Transformers cover where the Optimus's faces, the G2 opens up.
The G2 cover.
I did buy that when it came out, so that was probably the last thing I touched Transformers for a while. But so there was a lot I didn't know, and I didn't know what was and wasn't important, and I didn't know who or whose importance I needed to care about or not. If you can catch my drift.
Who was iconic and who wasn't?
Yeah. And whose opinion in the fandom mattered, or in these fan bases, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like, how do I get this information? Oh, there's different opinions. And, what's a brick transformer versus, this type of...
the slang that existed at the time.
All that stuff. And so I didn't know what I didn't know. So we were trying to use these names, preferably on vehicles that made sense, for the type of name that the word implied. Transformers often is reliant on the name to convey some sort of attitude, as well as just, hey, my name is Bob.
I just want to jump in there. That's actually because so there for years we had a character called Cyclonus. He was associated with in 1986, he was this futuristic jet, if you will. You took Cyclonus and put it on a helicopter, which made way more sense for his name.
Yeah.
Cyclone,
Yeah.
I
always wanted
it was actually clever. I just wanted to say that. It was actually a clever use of it.
I'm gonna out myself here a little bit. I was a bachelor. I had nothing going on. I moved to Rhode Island. It was dark. It was winter. I lost myself in this series.
Okay.
I didn't go home for Thanksgiving that year because I did the whole first wave decos. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So I really learned a lot and was absorbing a lot of Transformer information, which will ultimately get us to how I ended up on the boards and different things at different times, and my commitment to BotCon and the various Transformer conventions over the years.
The birth of Orson.
Yeah, a little bit.
We'll get into that later.
It's that commitment to learning and seeing and understanding, oh, wow, people do care about this, or, oh, there's an opinion here, or, oh, that's a good point. Let's absorb that, or, wow, what a wonderful concept. Let's talk to that person, And it really started my entire time with engaging more knowledge about the brand, right? Which, if anybody who ever met me along the way, I hope that they felt that, wow, that guy is always trying to hear more stuff. He can't always address it, but, air the grievances, talk the good, the bad, the ugly, and maybe something will come of it. So
I don't remember, when was your first BotCon?
It was the last Fort Wayne.
Oh boy!
So 2003, maybe.
Okay. Yeah,
it was literally a couple weeks before Armada came out.
Was it 2003?
Because we showed the first episode.
Because I went to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Was that the 2003 one? Because they went multiple times to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah.
Just trying to remember which one it was. It's kind of like West Coast. It's the same
I
thing.
want to say it was 2003.
Yeah, I'd have to look it
Four
up.
seemed like it was Chicago, but
anyways, yeah,
it was really funny because we didn't know anybody and nobody knew us. Although I think we stood out like sore thumbs.
Did you have like Hasbro shirts at least or something?
We just looked so corporate either way, you know.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
pleated,
that's why.
Pleated pants and nice shirts, you know.
There you go.
Not a black T-shirt. Sorry to say, fans.
Well, no, the average BotCon is I'll fall on the sword. Average BotCon tuxedo, as I want to call it, is probably a T-shirt, usually of something pop culture, a pair of shorts and flip flops, you know.
And a large bag.
And a school bag
Large,
specifically. Yeah. I'll fall on that sword. Don't worry.
so this is 2001. I go out. So we're showing back and forth to management the models, the ideas. We're gonna have this. We hit upon the idea of calling them Minicons, and we're gonna bring back the classic terms still. The Autobots, Decepticons. We needed a logo for the Minicon, and away we went, I guess. Did I cover your last thing?
Oh yeah, no, sure,
Okay.
sure. Well, one thing then is so how did you come up like with the name? Because so on the Japanese side, it was called Micron. And I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but there's almost something baked in with that name that leads to the origin of those characters story-wise, but we're jumping ahead with that. But how did you guys fall on Minicon? Because within the Transformers lore, and I mean, this is getting a little deep in it, but it's like whenever you had a sub-faction with the Autobots, Dinobots, aerial bots, whatever,
Yep.
It always had bot at the end.
Yep.
With Decepticons, it was Constructicons, Stunticons, whatever. So they always had con at the end. How did you guys fall on Minicon? Was that intentional? Was it just, con sounds better than Minibot? Minibot's too on the nose? Like, what is it?
Minibot was too generic, for sure. I don't think we thought of it that deep. The way you just described it, I don't think we realized that
just want to
maybe
put
we should have considered that nomenclature.
Just wanted to put it to rest because sometimes because the thing is the Japanese version of Minicons is called Microns.
Yeah, so
the origin of those characters in the fiction is Unicron. So that's Japan kind of looked 2 steps ahead. So, but that's why I'm curious how you guys came to that conclusion.
That's the advantage that they had. They knew we were going to launch first.
Yeah.
So so if I had a year of development, they had almost a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
In a way, to make those other subtle decisions. I don't know. I'll just say I don't know that we knew that they were going to call them Microns. I thought there are a few things that we didn't realize that they were going to change.
Oh, almost all the names.
Because we didn't. They didn't report into us, and that was fine. Excuse me. Whatever they needed to do in their market was fine, but we didn't realize they would drastically change terms that we were using in every meeting. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure I remember that it was called Micron until it came out.
Okay.
Plus, because of the pens, I'm not sure I would have even offered up that name.
Ah, that's true.
So that was kind of just a quirk of the 2 developments.
Okay. Again, I like to kind of put to rest a lot of, like questions that people usually have. That's like, how did that come to be? So then I guess the next thing we could probably jump into. So you're in Japan now. You're having sake with those guys. You're hanging out at Yoke-san's house. Like, what's the whole story there?
So that summer, I go out there for the big development. So I'm going to be there for over 3 weeks. And we're gonna tackle a lot of the products that we have previously decided we like these models or this direction, and some work is being done by engineers at this time on refining things and figuring these features out on graph paper. And I'm going to go out there, and we're going to go down the line and tighten up some stuff, make some decisions, design a few of the characters. It was on the table. And then the rest of the team is going to meet me at the end of it, and we're going to present the work that we've done. So that's the plan. So I'm going to go out there in July of 2001, and I live in the Takara dormitory out in the country. Awesome. Yoki-san picks me up at the airport. I come in a day later than I was supposed to because of 3 747 failures.
And what year? This is in 2001.
Yeah.
Before 9/11.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely
imagine.
Was. Yeah, absolutely was. I flew a lot pre 9/11, and everything's very different now. So I go out there, and the dorm is awesome. It's a little, small, efficient apartment. Very Japanese, very cool, out in the country where I can guarantee you they never saw a Caucasian fellow like me walking by himself towards the grocery store or whatever.
Oh, my God.
One of my big regrets is I didn't go to the corner bar, and hang out with old Japanese men and have some gasoline.
Yeah.
I do regret that. But there was a...
Using the common language of alcohol.
Yeah. There was a designer in the dormitory that had a car, and that designer was Yuki-san. And he was still living in the dormitory, and he would drive me in every day, which was a kind of a perk. I didn't have to take the train in from the country. And he was happy to do it because I think they, paid for his gas or something, which, is a big deal in Japan. Having a car in Japan is not fun. But Yuki-san did not speak a lot of English. So Shiragami-san, who was also in the dormitory, who was the engineer that was going to be on Armada, got to take a ride every day. So he didn't have to take the train. So he was happy I was there. So you just had these 3 guys that had a good time riding into work every day, which was really funny. We used to sing. He had an awesome CD of sci-fi music, and we'd all enjoy the Star Trek music, and we'd sing Battleship Yamato.
My God.
He'd sing it in Japanese, and I'd sing my lyrics in English.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very fun. Very fun.
Well, it's cool to hang out with like-minded geeks, but across the globe.
Absolutely.
There's still a common point, which is pretty cool. And again, something like Battleship Yamato, which also aired in America just in a dub form. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So
that's pretty crazy.
So that's how I got to work every day. They took me out to eat every night, but all day, every day, what I thought we would do was kind of make some general decisions, and people would go off and make it happen, because that's kind of how the Hasbro system was. But I went figure by figure by figure until we got it done.
And would you say
it was pretty crazy?
Would you say that that's the Takara way that they do things, or was that just what you guys decided that that's how you were going to do things? Like, is that a Japanese Takara method of how you guys get stuff done, or was that just what you guys decided this is how we're going to do it?
The bottleneck that had to make certain decisions.
Okay.
For the dual partnership representation or whatever, so everything had to go through me.
Everything had to filter through you in the end.
So yeah. And they're very focused. It just I hadn't worked that way before. I don't know if it was that way just because of the situation we were in, or that's how they just always do it.
Well, especially here's you. You've been working on these big brands, Batman, the movies, all this stuff in the Western toy world, with Western designers and Western engineers and everything like that. Now you're on the other side of the globe. Was there a huge, like you could say, I guess we could call it a workplace difference? Because we've always heard, the Japanese, they're such, they're so dedicated. It's such a work career environment lifestyle. You
Yeah.
know, like,
Well,
did you see that or?
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I worked with guys who were good dudes. I had great times with at dinner, and was out till late with, and they still had an hour and a half, 2 hour commute home. And I started
That I always
I
hear,
really
yeah.
started to like
On the bullet train.
think about that as I was out having fun, and it became less fun, honestly. You know, because they're not obliged, but you know, it's part of the culture. It's part of the
Yeah.
how it works. You know, they can't say, "Hey, my boss, my wife wants me to go home tonight." You know, that's not happening. So I started to feel for these guys, but that comes later, I guess. But so we go out every night, but during the day we just you know, go project to project. What else could I say about that?
Well, let's put it this way. What was the first character you guys tackled? If it is project to project,
Yeah,
who was number one? Who was the Sunstreaker? Because, I think it was Kojin Ono recounted that the very first transforming Diaclone Microman that was ever produced was Sunstreaker. Or,
Yeah.
So what was the Sunstreaker of Armada? Who was the first guy that was designed?
I'm pretty sure it was Hotshot.
Interesting. Oh, also a yellow car? Interesting.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
was also I think Yuki-san. I think he did that one.
I'd have to look that one up. Yeah, I think you might be. I think he did that one.
I think he did that one, and Smokescreen with me. And then he went off to a different team not too long after to do some other form of product. Because he was into other types
You know
of
what?
cars.
But now that I think about it, like Hotshot was one that kind of also had a bit of the growing pains.
Yeah, and that's
the
why,
line.
because Hotshot is one of those early models.
Yeah,
And
when he had an early model that was very different from the final product.
Yeah, and sometimes it's great to have early models to show the potential of a line, and sometimes those models, like you say, is they're not fully baked, but yet you run with it because it was the first model.
Well, it's funny because when you mention Hotshot, because like he had like a model, a first version that never got released. But it's out there. There's images of it.
Yep.
That's quite different from what the final product was. But even the final product has things in it that are very play pattern unique to that version that none of the other deluxe characters have. And what I mean by that, for people that are not aware, like his Minicon was able to hold his engine as a weapon, which none of the other Minicons with their counterparts could do. He had a lot of extra features, like it could go on the back and become a propeller. It pulls it makes this cannon come out from his back, but it also makes these two bumper pieces open. There was a lot of extra, I guess, like you mentioned, like the Japanese wanted to have all these like little extra things, and this is the deluxe one. We're not
Well,
talking
it
like
shows that having an early development model, you can really finesse something.
Yeah.
And you
Exactly.
can overthink it or put a lot of effort into it, however you want to look at that. Whereas if you're a rush, you're going to see the opposite. Things that don't fit great or aren't thought through. Or
when you look at all the other deluxes from Armada, they don't have that much.
Yeah. Well, also
you.
It's always a little bit of a bait and switch, not on purpose, but you fall in love with some models. And a concept, a play pattern, right? Minicons are going to do this. Things will open up, and it'll be part of the play. And then you get costing in and start really getting into it, and maybe you can make that first wave work, but you can't consistently keep that up.
I also want to confirm another thing because I just remembered too. Was there at any point, and I've never confirmed this with anybody, was there at any point that Hotshot was going to be called Bumblebee? It's stuff that
I think we looked into it. I think we...
Okay.
But I think we thought it was fairly generic. For a long time, I think we just didn't want to use it because it was, like, generic.
Okay.
Sad to say, but it is.
No, it's cool. It's just because there's It's funny because like we've talked about it in the past with some of the how you guys tackle. We did even a panel together at one of the TF cons where we talked about like the choice of the names for some characters, like Sideways and everything like that. But I don't think we ever covered Hotshot and how he was going to be Bumblebee. That's why it just popped in my head now. Just remembered that. But yeah, so like okay, so Hotshot is one of the first ones. Was Cyclonus one of them too? Would you say?
Yeah. So that whole
because he's another one too that has a very weird, unique.
And Demolishor would have been in there.
Yeah.
Optimus was a model because of the blossoming and raising up and putting the other part on, although the model looked a little bit different. But I have photos of that model that we'll show.
Excellent.
And then there was kind of a cobbled up Megatron product in that early part of the 2001 that came to Rhode Island for some presentations. And that it changed a little bit.
The rumor was, again, correct me if I'm wrong, again, this is fandom rumors, was the Megatron design took aspects from what existed from Transtech previously. And people started this rumor because there's early concepts of Transtech Megatron, and there's similarities there of that H-tank and as what Megatron would become in Armada.
Yeah. I mean,
is that
I don't think that was
factual,
intentional. I will say that reference was around.
Okay.
But if that happened, it's because Takara was reusing some ideas. I didn't really know Transtech as well as I do now to talk about it. So they may have presented me with a H-tank to veneer.
Okay.
So during all this product by product, I mentioned that the engineers at Takara were working on the graph paper versions of how the transformation would work. Mm-hmm. That's what Takara would put down in front of me, and we'd talk over the things you do in toys, which is very mundane, but like how far should a projectile sit in or out of the projectile? Is there enough for the launcher? Is there enough room for this, that, or the other? How can you cut the wheels to make them fit better, or the side panels to look a little less blocky? These little things.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah, it's all fun toy stuff. So they would present me with the graph paper and show me these things, and we'd make decisions to pinch areas or expand areas because it needed wall thicknesses. Or I would kind of use a piece of tracing paper and veneer, what I call veneering, those images or those engineering drawings.
And for people who don't understand, what is veneering?
Veneering in this case is I'm using their template, their technical engineering spec template that has no form to it, and giving it the design form. So I'm essentially doing my sculpt input on going back to the previous podcast, we talked about a buck. Yeah. It's an engineering buck. This is the size we need and spaces we need to do the articulation or the feature or the transformation, the way you guys have talked about it, or the way this model's working. But now what do you want it to look like? What's the little filigree, the little details that you want it to look like? And that's what I was doing.
What it is essentially is it's a transformer. It doesn't have its fine details put in, but the basic idea of the transformation is present, and you bring in those fine details that give it its look. Okay, because like going back to what you said, like a buck for people that didn't listen to last episode, you should. But if you didn't. A buck, it's pretty much like the 5-point of articulation. It shows, it's a picture a nude figure, if you will, and then the detail is then put in there from the same kind of idea.
So we have the Megatron version of this. So all the little choices to put, grid wall behind the Decepticon logo on the shoulder patterns, what the chest ab area is going to look like. Every little detail, every little line across his kind of window chest, are decisions that are made off their engineering design. They told me what the size was going to be, and then I veneered it. That's the best I can say. So all those little details have to be decided upon. So I did that, and then Takara would have their artists do the 3/4 views. And I think a lot of Transformer fans might be familiar with this because you've seen them in various books, but they're kind of, that is what the model maker will actually use as their visual guide to what the character should look like. On top of that engineering stuff that'll be built into their model, but then they have to build out those details, and they do that all in styrene, or at the time they did it in styrene. That nothing's sculpted back then.
So in terms of, like, let's say we'll go back to Megatron. So Megatron had all these different gimmicks, right?
Yeah.
He was actually one of the more, with the exception of maybe like, I'm trying to think of maybe like Tidal Wave. Not many of the Armada guys had as many gimmicks as Megatron did. So were you the one that decided, oh, he's going to have this capture area, he's going to have this knife in his hand that's also
Yeah.
So was it you who made those calls, or was this like a group decision, like, oh, it would be cool if he had a knife? Or
No,
how did that go about?
I put that knife there on purpose because it echoes the G1 sword hand.
Ah, okay. All right.
How about that?
So what he's referring to, the Japanese version of Megatron had a sword, the Microman version, if you will. I did not even make that connection.
Yeah, that's subtle. It's very subtle, but that was why he had a knife in his hand. But again, this was kind of an early model, so all the bells and whistles were figured into it. It was a platform figure, which meant it was going to be a hub of all the Minicon kind of activity. So we wanted to overdo it with Megatron and Optimus.
Being a playset without being a playset, essentially. Because
yeah.
Optimus would be a playset, but in the closest he could be to one.
When you think about the collector mentality we were trying to go for, we assumed that kids might start to get a lot of these Minicons, and you didn't want to just always have one or two spots. So a few of these figures we kind of highlighted as opportunities to really let you play in a more massive way.
It's like an ecosystem that they could all exist in.
Yeah.
On one figure.
Yeah. And so Megatrons were certainly a more villainous as far as capture and all that kind of thing.
No, that's pretty cool. That's yet again, I'm making notes here myself, going like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so then, like, also let's talk about some of the early guys. So you have Optimus Prime here. You said that this design kind of was from somewhere else prior to that, you said?
Well, they had a model. They were intrigued by this VR concept of having a place that open up and become a bigger robot.
So the idea of using something that was remote, if you will, that was something that they've been playing with before, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
when they brought that to the party, and we're like, oh yeah, that's really interesting,
Because when we look at like something else Takara was developing just prior to the year before, so here's Web Divers. They were playing with this idea of like, oh, it connects to your TV, and the toy becomes some kind of a remote thing, and then here's this Optimus. What? Are we going to make this Optimus this infrared signal to the trailer that makes it transform? Like, when did that start, would you think?
That was early. That was early meetings. So
okay.
that March or kind of March-April meeting when Takara came out to Hasbro, or they might have came right after Toy Fair. They often came. So that might have even been February.
And another big one, which was kind of not completely started with this one, because it's chicken before the egg, because also there was a few other Transformers that did the same thing, like Big Convoy, but this Optimus has a sculpted matrix in his chest. Yep. When was the call to make that? Because now that's almost commonplace today. And it's like, how do you not have an Optimus that has some kind of chest detail for that? But when was that decision made back then? This is something we want to have inside this character, to show that here's the matrix of leadership. Here's this callback to the '86 movie.
I think with a lot of...
Was that a decision from you? Was it someone else?
Yeah. There was nobody else that was putting that level of focus on it.
Okay.
Which is to say, I had free reign to kind of do it as I wanted to do it. Takara was always eager to echo the past, so let's start there. So if we could have made it G1, perfectly G1, they would have been fine with that. Mm-hmm. So any hints at that was always fine with them as well. So when I said, let's, kind of hide this in the transformation and hide this level, we got to veneer it anyway. I am a proponent of branding the plastic. So if you're a toy designer and you're making toys and parts and stuff, I like iconography that denotes what product line or fantasy you're in. When it comes to feature-based toys, not replica toys, but the types of toys I made, iconography is a big part of it. So where was I heading with that?
No, just like because obviously when you look at that Optimus, it does that matrix
so
doesn't
I
affect
don't mind
the
hiding that kind of stuff in there.
Yeah,
that's just like the Jetfire bay. Bay doors open up and there's like a star.
There's
map.
little fine details there.
Yeah, I'm into that. When we talk Night Force Ninja, there's some unique things in there, detail wise. So I am into that kind of smaller detail, subtler detail.
And we actually don't see that much today with Transformers anymore. It's kind of a shame. You see it like once in a while with the odd figure, but I remember they're like within the community. One of the, I don't know who the sculptor was, but there was a Titan's Return beachcomber that on the inside of his wrist or something was written in Cybertronian. Was it? It wasn't beachcomber. It was it was beachcomber, and it had his girlfriend's name on the inside of the wrist. And but like you rarely see that anymore. You rarely see that where it's like here's this flat surface that would have just been no detail.
Yeah,
and and in the case of the Optimus that we're just talking about. It doesn't affect the transformation. Could have easily just been a flat gray area, no detail, and it wouldn't have changed the figure at all. But here's this flat surface. You could now sculpt.
Yeah, I always think
leadership.
of that as an opportunity for storytelling. Going back to that Batman and mini rig stuff on Star Wars, the stories give you permission for fantasy in these kids' minds as you're playing with it, even now, right? Those little details help you tell more story in your head, and create little scenarios.
You've never worked with any guys with micro machines, have you, with Galoob ever? Have you?
Oh yeah,
because they were notorious for doing that kind of stuff.
I was part of the Galoob, the end of Galoob. I worked with the guys before they closed it down. Because
there was a lot of that. Like I collect a lot of like the play sets. And there's a lot of like sculpted character.
Yeah.
And it's like, something as simple as like there's a snake there and there's a skull next to it. And it's like there's, they could have easily just had nothing there, but it's like there's something there. There's like a story being told there from that little sculpted detail.
That is the type of thing I enjoyed doing a lot throughout my career. And I was fortunate to work on brands so I could get away with it, where we were making stuff up and that kind of thing. Or preference. Armada gave me the opportunity to do a lot of my personal preference, right? Mm-hmm. Where I either didn't care about certain forms or cared too much about other forms. I don't know.
Another thing, too, so when you have certain characters with their Minicons, it's pretty clear that there's gang molding going on there, correct? Like there's these because some Minicons
for the 3-packs.
Well, not the 3. I'm saying like you have the large figure itself.
Oh yeah. We were never able to. That's why you never see those figures
individually sold.
Yeah, we would have sold them. Like
a million times over and repainted
exactly.
them. Yeah,
but yeah, you couldn't get Roll Bar out of the Scourge or whatever his name was, Scavenger, I think.
Yeah, you're correct, Scavenger.
He was locked up with other parts of that mold, so we never did it.
It was only the other way around. You would always see that. You'd have the 3-packs. Once in a while, you could take a 3-pack one and put it with somebody. Yeah. But you never saw like one of the individuals tied to a larger figure finding his way to a 3-pack or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Like Jolt is red because of that mold that's red on Hot Shot.
Hot Shot, it's gang molded. For people who aren't familiar, gang molding is when it's made in the factory, all the red parts are the red parts, and
they're sharing molds.
They're all together. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to get that across for people too. One last thing. So now you have, and this is another thing too that wasn't very common with this line. you're seeing much more of a lean also on electronics and sound effects. You guys played a little bit with that when you were in Beast Machines and in Robots in Disguise, but not in a large kind of way. You know, yeah, the Optimus had it, the Ultra Magnus, but those were also very Japanese products. And that's why I ask was the use of electronics and sound effects something that the Japanese wanted put in, or was it something that you guys just wanted to do to begin with? Because when you look at Beast Wars, it's pretty absent in general. You know what I mean? Optimus Primal had light up stuff. Optimal Optimus had a kind of like a light up gimmick, but that really was it. And then when you go into Beast Machines, there's not really much of that except for Cheetor. You know, Cheetor's that big. Again, these big products all had the lights and sounds, but you never really saw that in the more mid tier stuff. But here, you know, we have all the mid tier stuff like Starscream and even, you know, of course, Optimus and Red Alert. They all have lights and sounds. Where did that decision come to, like, really start having that play pattern put into stuff, even up the lower?
It's a point of difference from what was coming before.
Yeah.
So, you know, if the previous segments didn't have as much of it, then it's still an opportunity to bring that to life. Again, we were trying to make characters. One thing that I think we'll talk about more in a future version of this Armada segment. Armada was going to give us the opportunity to do a lot more outreach and licensing and partnering. So that was coming down the pike too, that we had to start considering.
Well, that is true. Like, Robots in Disguise didn't have trading cards, didn't have video games, didn't have any of that.
So we wanted to put our best foot forward and show that we were, you know, making characters, bringing them to life, that kind of thing.
Was that something that was an early, that like a Brian Goldner kind of like, we're going to make this Armada line or whatever it was going to be called at the time, and on top of that, we want to make sure there's an Armada video game. We're going to talk to Fleer and make Armada trading cards. We're going to talk to this licensee company that makes little flashlights, and there's going to be a little Armada Optimus Prime flashlight, which is a real thing. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so when he says we're going to put focus on our core brands and make a bigger deal out of them and put our effort behind them so that other people want to put their efforts behind them, that's what he meant. So that we would be not only making toy revenue money, but we would be making licensing revenue money.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
And
the big money.
That certainly worked. I mean, it, you know, the comic book relationship started because of this goal.
That is true. I totally forgot to mention Dreamwave. Yeah, Dreamwave was also starting their thing at the same time.
So that was all baked into the cake from the beginning, that we were going to make a multi-tiered effort, and that Takara and Hasbro were going to do this together and co-develop this animation, make these products, and you know, hopefully with co-development not be as burdened by the investment that clearly was coming.
Mm-hmm. How early on did you guys know, by the way, that Dreamwave was going to be involved with like a pack-in comic and part of the copyright in a lot of ways?
Well, that is a longer story.
Okay.
But when they came on board, they had great stuff going. And if anything, just for this segment that I will say, is that their eagerness outpaced their output.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Pat Lee story is for another time.
We don't have to beat that dead horse. Yeah. But so we needed Impact Comics. We needed Impact cards. We needed character art that Takara or the animation company wasn't developing, for characters that weren't in the show. Mm-hmm. And we needed to copy a certain style and so on and so forth. So they did a lot of it early on, but started to fall off really quick. And that's how Marcello Materi gets into the picture.
Interesting.
Because I emailed him and asked him if he was a professional and does freelance. And
did Marcello start in the Armada era?
Yeah, absolutely. He started in the Armada package art era. Yeah. So
Alrighty. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did the Swindle package art illustration that's in like the Dreamwave books and stuff.
Okay.
That was his first image. But he did. There was card art we needed for something. Anyway, so I needed people. Once we fell in love with Dreamwave, we needed people that could draw like them when they started, not being able to keep up. So that's how Marcelo came into the picture and some other guys. That way.
Even Alex.
Yep.
Yeah, Alex did our alternator stuff with you guys.
Yeah.
So, another thing too that I wanted to bring up was,
so electronics too was just just to round that out. With the Minicon gimmicks of putting a Minicon into the port and making action happen, having sound effects happen too was just a easy toy get. So that's another reason that stuff exists. It made sense. It was easy to use.
So now going back to the differences, on the Japanese side of thing, when they were releasing Micron Armada product, they had a heavy lean on repainting these Minicons like crazy.
Oh yeah.
And if you're a Armada completist, not too tough on the Western side. If you're a Japanese Armada, aka Micron Legend completist, wow, there's a lot. They really like. So, why do you think they really leaned heavily on repainting like crazy on that side? Where you guys did it too, but not as much as they did. Like they really. Whew,
yeah, well, I mean, it's an efficient set of molds. It's a small price point. It's a small outlay of investment. At the time anyway. So it made for a good thing to partner with somebody. If they wanted to partner, you could offer up. They could offer that up pretty easily without it.
But do you think like their market is, because like to say like, why didn't the Western market, Hasbro, take like, I don't know, that Adventure Minicon 3-pack and repaint it 12 times within, no joke, within probably 12 months?
We were really focused on the animation at the time.
Okay.
And probably weren't thinking that broadly. We were more thinking, well, if they're in the animation, then they get promoted.
That's enough.
So to add extra and extra and extra, even with some of the redecos we tried to get in the show.
Which you guys did.
Yeah. So we probably weren't thinking toy commodity as much, because I felt very conscientious of we're rebuilding this brand, and every brick is going to be a potential good, bad, or ugly. I don't want it to be bad or ugly,
Yeah.
So it was like slow and steady, and we didn't think about some of those things yet.
Well, especially you came from brands like Batman that practically survived on repaint and put it out there.
Yeah.
And, put a new accessory and that's it. So, that's why I'm kind of curious how,
but I definitely, Batman, the segmentation idea of Batman, certainly you could see what happened with, Universe and alternators. And
afterwards.
And we started really playing the playbook there.
Also, what I wanted to bring up too is when you have stuff like, you have all these Minicons, they have repaint potential and stuff like that down the line. When you're doing, again, all these trademarks, and I understand you guys weren't thinking that far ahead with the trademarks, but most of the Minicons, not all of them, but they also had trademarks that were not like common Transformer names. Was that an independent decision? Like you guys want to go, well, we're not going to use a lot of well-known Transformer names for these Minicons. We want them to be brand new characters. Were you expecting that these would be breakout characters and this would, you understand what I'm kind of getting at?
Yeah, I do remember I didn't want to use heavy hitter heritage names. I think we called them heritage names back then.
Okay, well, there you go. That's what I'm getting
for
at.
Minicons.
Yeah.
I was fine using it on guys like Wheeljack and stuff, but the Minicons, even in my mind, I knew they were diminutive versions of Transformers, and I didn't want to, belittle any of the cool guy names, but I was going to name Unicron's guy Gobatron, right? So that was, and Leader 1 is Megatron's.
Yeah.
So that is an insult. That is me being insulting by using major names for Minicons that aren't Transformer names. If you want to look at it from that perspective.
Let me ask you this. So for years it's been known that while Hasbro owns the trademarks and stuff like that to the GoBots and stuff, they don't own the designs by Bandai Poppy back then that made the original Tonka GoBots. Getting Leader 1 as a name and trademark, was that easy for you to do? Like to just go, hey, we're going to name him Leader 1 for that reason?
We put in for it and it was available, so we took it. Yeah.
All right. Just want to know that one.
And I just laughed. I just like, really? We're going to do this. All right.
Yeah, we're going to do this. Leader 1.
Again, this is like, I didn't know what I didn't know. So like, that was like me being just kind of cheeky.
Yeah. But people appreciated it. Trust me.
Yeah. Not realizing.
The fandom did.
So that, that is an honest opinion. I was doing fun stuff for me any given day. I'm still not sure if it made sense day to day, the decisions if you lined them up, but I was learning a lot, and that shows. As we were developing this stuff.
Now I don't want to jump too far ahead, but at some point in the line, like you mentioned, you guys were going to take advantage of repainting previously existing molds from a narrative sense. Like, the characters are going to get new paint schemes and use that in the story, and you could do that with the toys too. That way you could just repaint the toys. This was something that had been only done once before. It was done in Robots in Disguise, where halfway through the segment the characters had powered up modes, which was the Autobot cars specifically.
Yep.
Was that something that you pulled directly because that's what Robots in Disguise car robots did? Or is it just something that you just felt, it's the easy way to go,
Yeah, it was a tactic that worked. If you're going to, Transformers has always been full of redecos. The whole thing is a big redeco.
Oh, well, I've always, people always tell me, they're like, oh, I hate repaints. I'm like, you are aware, 1984.
You don't like the Seekers?
1984... literally half of that catalog, and not to mention if you really want to go really deep, it's all a repaint. It's all
that's what I'm saying. Like with the class houses, right? Yeah. But so what were we talking about?
No, I'm just saying because it's like how the previous year you saw how on a narrative sense you could take, here's these 3 Autobot cars. In the story, we could repaint them. Like they get powered up, they get a new paint scheme. Oh, we have a whole new wave of product now.
Yeah, and I believe if you tell a good story with Transformers, it's all acceptable, right?
Yep.
The fans, everybody. So it was very much like if we're going to do redecos, which we know we needed to do. How can we get them in the show, or how can it be even in some cases, I think, where we have named characters as toys, but they might just be power-ups or something in the show. That was discussed at one point, like how literal do we even have to be? Because some of the redecos are pretty, they're made to just fill store shelves in a way. They weren't going to be a primary story driver. But that was all part of the tactical, try to make it all make sense. If there was going to be a redeco or a recolor opportunity, how can it be in the show?
So I think we'll stop it here.
We haven't talked about any of the actual toy development or personalities or names directly, so we'll be able to get into the toy stuff and development of the whole animation aspect.
Yeah, that's going to be like part 2, because we're going to definitely that's when we're going to start talking. All right, so here we're working on the show. We're going to have names for characters, because I didn't want to go too deep into like wave 2 and 3 of characters, because that's when the show is already running at that point. And so we'll.
So I do want to. Let's just top line a few things.
No problem.
What's about to come out is a G1 2.0 version of Transformers in a handsome package, sideways package, with a comic book, 2 transforming figures, a trading card or sticker, depending on your situation.
Yep.
Hell of a blister.
Very weirdly shaped blister. Hard to
hard to store.
Stack. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of scuffed blisters on those. Which was a very appealing offering after Beast Machines and even somewhat RID, although RID was pretty slick in its own way.
Yeah.
But that was also us trying to fix Transformers too at the same time. So we're committed to collecting. We're launching our new thing. We're trying to put it out in an impressive way with a new show. And that's where we are. I think we've laid that out, and we're about to see where that goes in a way.
Alrighty. And again, just to mention like the packaging, like the one thing I think I've talked about this in the past, but the one cool thing about Armada is I felt like you got a really good bang for your, like when you bought a deluxe Armada figure, you got a comic book, you got a sticker, you got the deluxe figure itself, and then a smaller figure with it too. Yeah. All in that deluxe price point, which by the way was the same price a year just before, where you just got, like, if you bought, let's say, X-Brawn from Robots in Disguise, you just got the car, and that was it. There was no comic book, there was no sticker, there was no extra figurine.
Yeah, I think you're seeing some of the price break of a co-development process there.
Yeah, and it was. I think that, like, in my opinion, like, from a fan standpoint, it was a really good, like, a pack. You know what I mean? It was a really good, like, you gave this to a kid. If you gave this to a kid, it was like it was a real starter kit in a lot of ways to the Transformer brand.
That was our commitment to thrive on our core brands, and to do that, you had to put it in a good presentation and get people to care about it and know about it and what's it all about. And I think all that communication certainly helped, because what's going to happen is things are going to start catching fire quick.
And also, which is another thing, too, you guys haven't done for quite a while, at least in the Western world, you included a catalog of I mean, geez, I can't even...
Those were fun.
I can't even... I'm looking at the whole, like, literally every G1 toy, and when was the last time we had a catalog with Transformers, because it wasn't in Beast Wars.
Yeah.
Wasn't in Robots in Disguise. Wasn't G2 didn't have a catalog. It probably was G1. It must have been probably 87, 88 when they stopped having catalogs.
Yeah, so we were ahead of development, so we were able to have that kind of fun.
So you have that cross sell also by having a catalog included on top of the comic book. Again, a lot going on just in that little deluxe packaging that even unfortunately is kind of absent today. You know, when we really think about it, it's really fascinating. And I remember back then how that really was kind of the peak of, like, you buy a deluxe Transformer, which the MSRP at the time was $10, and you got all of that in just this one thing. And like you said, to really revitalize the brand, every single deluxe Transformer kind of acted as a little starter kit if this was the first Transformer for that person. Because having all that, that fiction, the trading card, which it doubles as a sticker, so you could slap it on your notebook at school. There's the branding right there. It's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. I really like that.
Yeah, it was fun. We were clicking. Again, we didn't have a lot of people watching us either. This whole goal was set in motion, and we were left to make it happen. And so Armada is very personal to me that way, because it was. Every decision had to be made and thought through. And I know that sounds stupid. Every decision has to be made and thought through. But when it's fully on your shoulders or a small group of people's shoulders, it crystallizes your memory and the decisions and the theories you're making, why you are going to make that decision. Mm-hmm. So I'm able to, when we get into the individual characters and features and some of that, we'll be able to talk in depth about some subtlety there.
Well, especially, it's almost 20 years now, and there's a lot of people on my side of my podcast that they want to hear more about their first Transformer series, which was Armada.
Yeah.
There's people who are 25, 30 years old now, And that's what they grew up with. That was their first Transformers series on Cartoon Network, and that was the first Transformers they bought when Toys R Us and KB Toys were still a thing. And it's something that there's a huge demand now for that. And it's good to see that, like those stories could be told, and we'll be able to tell more of those stories and let you guys know how this was all created. Anything else you want to close up on before we call it a quits on part 1 of this?
No, I think I'm about 28, 29, not realizing the decisions that we're making here are going to have echoes for the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
So
sure.
It'll be interesting how these things will show back up when we talk about the Michael Bay films and some of that. For sure.
So again, thanks everyone for listening. And again, this is the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, and I'm your co-host Protoman. And if you have any questions, if there's anything you guys want us to bring up, at least in relation to this first part of the development of Transformers Armada, be sure to just send us a comment, send us a PM message on Twitter. Again, the hashtag Toy Armada is another way to get our attention. If not, just private message us, and we'll try to get it on the show. But yeah, again, thanks again, Aaron, for being here.
No problem. This was fun.
And yeah, it's always fun, yeah, especially now we're talking my wheelhouse. It's gonna be, it's a whole different story. But again, thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we hope to hear more from you guys soon. And again, like always, roll out.